I'll share with you 6 tips that will greatly help you in your pre-service teachings, and all you gotta do is to keep on watching. Hey, what's up guys, and this is Niel, and welcome back to my YouTube channel where we talk about the DepEd ranking, lesson plan tutorials, and other teacher-related stuff. So for today's video, I will share with you 6 tips that will greatly help you in your pre-service teachings. Pero wait, bago tayo mag-start, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down there at hit ang notification bell para mag-i-updated kayo sa lahat ng mga videos natin every single week. And if you continue watching until the end of this video, I'll share with you one bonus tip that greatly helped me in my pre-service teaching. The first tip that I want to share with you is having a strong foundation when it comes to your lesson plan writing. Kasi sa unang araw pa lang ng pre-service teaching mo, your cooperating teacher will ask you kung marunong ka na bang gumawa ng lesson plan. And if you say yes, sa tingin mo maniniwala kami. If you answered yes, hindi kami naniniwala right away because actions should always speak louder than words. Kaya within your first week, or sooner or later, you will be asked by your cooperating teacher to write your own lesson plan, and ituturo mo yon once na ma-check yun ng cooperating teacher at pulidong-pulido na ang iyong lesson plan. Now, when your cooperating teacher asks you to write your own lesson plan, expected na niya yan na dapat alam mo na ang basics when it comes to lesson plan writing. As a practice teacher, it is expected that you should know or you should identify the 5 major parts of the lesson plan, and they are the objectives, the subject matter, the procedures, the evaluation, and the assignment, remediation, or enhancement, depende yan kung anong mangyayari sa lesson mo. Now, after that, you should also be able to write every major part of the lesson plan. Kailangan alam mo na kung ano ang nilalagay sa objectives, and they are the cognitive, the affective, and the psychomotor objectives. Kailangan alam mo din kung ano ang nilalagay sa subject matter, ano ang tamang pagkasunod-sunod ng activities pagdating sa procedure, kasi meron tayong iba't iba pang subparts sa procedure. We have the preliminary activities, the developmental activities, the discussion, or the motivation muna pala, the discussion, then we have the application, generalization, and then diretso tayo sa evaluation. Pagdating sa evaluation, kailangan akmang-akma yung gagamitin mong assessment doon sa learning objectives na sinulat mo for that lesson. And then after that, kailangan align din yung ibibigay mong activity sa iyong assignment para meron tayong learning continuity. As a practice teacher, it is also expected of you that you should know the SMART characteristics of a lesson plan. Kasi kailangan mo din itong ipakita pag ikaw na ang gumawa ng lesson plan mo kapag naging practice teacher ka na. Ngayon, balikan natin ang SMART characteristics. S means specific. Gaano ka-specific ang learning objectives mo? Kaya nga tayo meron 3 objectives na cognitive, affective, and psychomotor dahil may tinatarget silang separate domains para magkaroon tayo ng holistic learning. M means measurable. Kaya bang sukatin ang ituturo mong lesson sa mga bata? Ngayon, paano mo susukatin ang isang lesson? And that will be through your assessments, whether during or after your discussion or the lesson. A means attainable. Akma ba ang lesson mo for that specific grade level? Akma ba ang learning difficulty para sa mga learners mo? At akma ba ang lesson mo sa interests and needs ng learners mo? R means result-oriented naman. What are the expected outputs or products na kailangan makreate ng bata at the end of the lesson? And then, T means time-bounded. Ilang minutes lang bang kailangang ituro ang iyong lesson? Kailangan nakalagay lagi yan sa iyong lesson plan. And those are the SMART characteristics of the lesson plan. It is also expected that you should have an idea when to use the correct and appropriate activities for your lesson. Kailangan may idea ka kung kailan tamang gamitin ang rubrics, when to use graphic organizers, when to use group activities such as cooperative or collaborative learning, when to use experiments, and so on and so forth. And after that, kailangan may idea ka din kung ano-ano ang sources na pwede natin gamitin for our lesson plans. At kung hindi mo alam, marami tayong pwede mapagkunan, such as the teacher's guide, the learner's material, the curriculum guide, textbooks, and your other learning materials such as yung video clips, cartolina, Manila paper, at lahat ng mga cheche-boreching ginagamit natin for our demonstration teachings. But among all of those learning materials, the curriculum guide is the most important of them all. Kasi ang curriculum guide ang magsasabi kung ang lesson mo ba ay akma for that specific grade level. And besides, yung lesson sa curriculum guide, lagi silang may code bilang patunay na ang lesson ay nanggaling sa curriculum guide. And after the curriculum guide, nandyan yung teacher's guide and learner's material para alalayan ka. Because the teacher's guide is actually parang a lesson plan na nagbibigay na sa'yo ng recommendations kung paano mo i-execute ang bawat lesson. And sa learner's material naman, makikita ang several activities na pwede mong gamitin for your demonstration teaching. For face-to-face classes, gumagamit kami ng curriculum guide. But during the pandemic, meron kami tinatawag na most essential learning competencies at dito mo makikita ang mga piling-piling lessons na ituturo natin sa mga bata during this pandemic. Dito tayo makakakita ng mga lessons na na-retain from the curriculum guide at meron din tayong lessons na pinagsama. Aside from that, kung hindi ka naman gagawa ng isang ESP lesson, it is also expected of you na makapag-integrate ka ng ESP lesson sa iyong lesson plan. Kasi when you become a DepEd teacher someday, it is very important for a teacher to integrate a subject in another subject. Yun yung tinatawag naming teaching across the curriculum. Paano ka makakagawa ng tulay between one lesson from a subject to another subject? Papasok din dito yung ability mo to ask and to use hot questions or yung questions that will always require higher order thinking skills. Ngayon tatanungin ko kayo, sa revised Bloom's Taxonomy of Cognitive Domain, sa anong level nag-uumpisang pwedeng magtanong ng hot question? And if you answer analysis, analyze, analysification, ification, tama ka doon. Kaya, when it comes to your lesson plan writing, sa discussion na part, it's very important to use questions that will always begin with, what if, what happens next, if this happened, what do you think will happen next, tama ba ang sinabi niya, how can you say that this is true, at paano mo nasabi?
Paano nasabi?
Kaya nga sa lesson plan writing, it is very important na may hot question kasi hindi pwedeng puro lower order thinking skills lang ang ginagawa o yung kinakailangan ng bata para matutunan niya ang lesson. Hindi pwedeng puro recognizing, understanding, and applying lang. Kailangan, kung ano yung tinuro mo sa kanila, they can either analyze, they can either evaluate that lesson, or they can create something new about it. It is also very impressive for a practice teacher kung marunong siyang gumawa or gumamit ng other lesson plan formats such as the 4A's, 5E's, 7E's, explicit, inductive, deductive, at marami pang iba. Though this is not required. Kasi pag naging practice teacher kayo, mainly the traditional format ang ginagamit talaga. Kaya kapag medyo unfamiliar pa kayo or confused pa rin kayong gamitin ang other lesson plan formats, always use the traditional format. In recent times, teachers often go with OBE. Now, OBE means outcome-based education. At anong ibig sabihin nun? Kapag gumamit tayo ng OBE, kailangan clearly defined or malinaw na malinaw ang learning targets ng lesson mo. Kailangan malinaw kung ano ba ang kailangang makuha or ma-achieve ng bata at the end of the lesson. For example, for our junior high school TLE teachers, your learning objectives should be very clear if you are teaching the proper steps in creating a clubhouse sandwich. Another example is for our elementary math teachers. Your learning objectives should be very clear if you are teaching the proper steps in dividing numbers. Kailangan clearly written or well-defined ang ating learning objectives para malinaw din ang ating learning outcomes. Ngayon, bakit ko ba laging ine-emphasize na kailangan clearly written ang iyong learning objectives? It's because kapag na medyo nalito-lito ka na or na-confuse ka na sa progression of activities sa lesson plan mo, you will always go back to the learning objectives. Kapag wala ka nang maisip na mga activities or hindi mo alam kung anong ipapagawa mo sa mga bata, you will always go back to the learning objectives. At kapag clearly written at malinaw na malinaw ang hinihingi ng learning objectives, kaya mong tapusin ang lesson plan mo. It's also impressive when a practice teacher always check the learning objectives with the corresponding content standard and performance standard na makikita natin sa ating curriculum guide. Ngayon, ano itong tinatawag nating standard? Kapag naging practice teacher na kayo at nakahawak kayo ng curriculum guide, you'll notice na for every learning objective, may katabi siyang tinatawag nating content standard and performance standard. Itong mga standards na to ay kailangang mapossess ng bata for every domain of every subject. For example, sa English, we have different domains. Ang daming saklaw ng English na domain. We have, for example, vocabulary, grammar, and listening skills. Now, for every domain, iba din ang corresponding content and performance standard. Kaya laging sinasabi namin sa mga pre-service teachers, kailangan nyong i-accommodate ang content standard and performance standard along with the learning objectives na ginawa mo for that lesson. Ngayon, hindi mo pwedeng i-disregard yung content standard and performance standard kasi kapag wala siya or hindi sila nakikita sa lesson plan, so ano pang point na nilagay mo siya sa iyong lesson plan? Oh, no! Ngayon, anong mangyayari kung hindi pa kayo marunong or hindi nyo alam kung paano gamitin ang mga standards? If you're having a hard time searching for the standards of your learning objectives, you can always ask the help of your cooperating teacher. Kaya nga sila nandyan, it's because they will guide you sa mga usaping ganito. And then, you can also ask your cooperating teacher kung paano magiging visible or magiging evident yung standards na yun sa iyong lesson aside from your learning objectives. Now, let's take a look at these examples para magkaroon kayo ng idea on how to use the content standard and performance standard. Okay, so ito yung ating lesson plan for kindergarten at sinasabi dito sa learning competency na natutukoy ang magagandang bagay na nakikita sa paligid. Ngayon, ang aking strategy para ma-check kung ang learning competency ba ay very evident sa lesson plan, i-check ko siya sa discussion. Ayan, dito tayo sa pagtatalakay. Ngayon, sabi ng teacher, ipapakita ang iba't ibang tanawin na nakita ng tauhan sa kwentong tinalakay. Ayan. Kung mapapansin ninyo, pinapahanap ng teacher sa mga learners ang magagandang bagay na makikita niya sa bawat larawan. So, pasok doon ang ating learning competency. Aside from the discussion, titingnan din natin kung tugma ba si learning competency sa evaluation. Ayan, pagtataya. Ang sabi dito, bilugan ang larawan ng isang magandang bagay at dahil ang target dito is dapat ma-distinguish ni learner ang magandang bagay at hindi magandang bagay, pasok ang evaluation at tugma ito sa kanyang learning competency. Ngayon dumako tayo sa ating content standard. Ang sinasabi ng content standard or pamantayang pangnilalaman ay ang bata ay nagkakaroon ng pag-unawa sa kahalagahan at kagandahan ng kapaligiran. Itong mga standards, pwede itong makita sa kahit anong bahagi ng lesson plan as long as ma-hit mo siya or ma-target mo siya. Sa case ko, dahil ito ay parang ESP-like na standard, nakita ko siya or ginamit ko siya sa aking discussion. Dito banda. Tinanong ko sa mga bata na bakit sa tingin ninyo or ano sa tingin nyo ang nagpapaganda sa bulaklak? Ayan. So doon pa lang, sabi sa content standard, papahalagahan na ng mga bata ang mga nakikita nila sa paligid. Aside from that, meron din tayong values integration na sinasabi na ang mga magagandang bagay na nakikita sa paligid ay likha ng Diyos. So doon pa lang, natatarget na natin ang ating content standard. Ngayon tingnan naman natin ang ating performance standard. Sinasabi ng performance standard na ang bata ay nakapagpapamalas ng kakayahang magmasid at magpahalaga sa ganda ng kapaligiran. Ngayon, sa ating sets of activities, na-accomplish na to ng bata. Evident ang ating performance standard, especially dito sa ating application. Kasi ang activity natin is, itong mga sets of pictures ay makikita sa kahon at kukunin ng bata ang isang halimbawa ng bagay na maganda or nakikita nilang maganda sa paligid. Ngayon, dahil ang performance standard natin is all about napapahalagahan at marunong magmasid ang bata ng mga magagandang bagay sa paligid, kaya niyang mag-distinguish ng maganda at hindi magandang bagay. So doon pa lang sa application, natatarget na natin ang ating performance standard at maliban din sa ating application, pwede din itong mangyari sa ating assignment or sa ating evaluation. Ngayon naman, dumako tayo sa isang detailed lesson plan for English 7. Ang main learning competency niya is to use imperatives and prepositions when giving instructions. So, hindi na tayo magko-focus dito sa ating learning competency. Diretso tayo sa ating content standard. Sinasabi ng content standard na the learner demonstrates understanding of contemporary Philippine literature as a means of responding to the demands of the global village, various extended text types, lexical and contextual cues, appropriate and polite oral language, stance and behavior, and use of imperatives, prepositions, verbs, and WH questions. Ngayon, kung mapapansin ninyo, ang daming concepts na nakalagay sa ating content standard. Hindi naman talaga lahat yan ay tina-target natin. Whatever matches the learning competency, yun lang ang gagamitin natin na content standard. At sa case natin, since our lesson is all about the use of imperatives and prepositions, yun lang ang gagamitin natin at yan nakikita ninyo. Yan, and use of imperatives and prepositions. So, kailangan makita daw ito sa ating lesson plan. Sabi daw, kailangan nagpapakita na nauunawaan na ng bata ang tamang paggamit ng imperatives and prepositions at madalas nakikita ito sa ating discussion. Kapag nakita sa discussion na okay naman ang understanding ng bata, ayan, sa progression of activities na it will lead to the understanding of how to use imperatives and prepositions, then okay po tayo doon. Pagdating naman sa performance standard, sinasabi na the learner transfers learning by explaining the need to be cooperative and responsible in today's global village, using appropriate strategies to comprehend extended text types, using lexical and contextual cues to understand unfamiliar words and expressions, using imperatives, prepositions, and appropriate and polite oral language, stance and behavior in various information sharing formats. Kung mapapansin niyo ulit, masyadong madami yung concepts ng performance standard at sinasabi nga natin, whatever matches the learning competency, yun lang ang piliin natin. So, sa case natin, since our lesson is still all about the use of imperatives and prepositions, yun lang ang ating bibigyan ng focus sa ating performance standard. Ngayon, ang kailangan nating makita dito is kung talaga bang nakakapag-transfer ng learning ang learner natin about the use of imperatives and prepositions. And madalas, nakikita natin ito sa ating mga several activities such as the application. I-check lang po natin. The application, ayan, diretso hanggang sa ating evaluation and sa ating assignment. As long as kayang gawin na ng bata or the learner can apply the lesson in new situations, targeted na po natin ang ating performance standards. Now, all of these guides will lead us to the next step, which is, in at least, you should be able to write a simple lesson plan and submit it on time. Ibig sabihin, sa una hindi pa namin kailangan ng mga cheche-borecheng activities galing sa lesson plan ng isang practice teacher. Kasi ang lagi namin chine-check is kung alam ba ng practice teacher ang tamang progression of activities ng lesson plan from start to finish. Ngayon, aanhin mo nga kung meron kang 4 picks 1 word na activity sa lesson plan mo kung hindi naman siya related, di ba? Simple lesson plans are okay as long as may clearly written and well-defined objectives kayong nailagay at tama ang pagkasunod-sunod ng activities sa lesson plan. Though makakakilala pa rin kayo ng mas elaborate at mas extravagant at mas bonggang mga gimmicks para sa inyong mga activities sa inyong lesson plan, pero siguro through the guidance of your cooperating teacher na siguro mga medyo later part na ng pre-service teaching. But sa umpisa ng pre-service teaching, go with simple lesson plans muna para hindi kayo masyadong malito at hindi kayo masyadong mahihirapan. Pero, kung sa tingin mo very knowledgeable ka na when it comes to your lesson plan writing, then go ahead with elaborate and extravagant activities. Walang pumipigil sa'yo. As long as kaya mo siyang i-execute at tama siya para sa lesson mo. Kaya ngayon yung sinasabing kung kaya mong panindigan, gawin mo na. It is very important that a practice teacher should always submit the lesson plan on time. Kasi kapag binigyan ka na ng cooperating teacher ng date kung kailan dapat ituturo mo yung lesson, kailangan mauuna yung lesson plan doon. So, paano ka gagaling when it comes to your lesson plan writing? Magagawa mo lang yan through practice. Wala talaga makakatalo sa practice. And that is why, ina-advise ko sa lahat ng mga beginning teachers na nakikilala ko na wag munang umasa sa ready-made lesson plans na nakikita nila online. Kahit yung mga lesson plans na ino-offer ko ng libre sa YouTube channel, wag yun siya munang masyadong gamitin. You should be able to create your own lesson plans and submit it or create it on time. And lagi niyong tatandaan na major X sa cooperating teacher kapag mabagal mag-submit ang practice teacher ng lesson plans. Kasi dapat, ang lesson plans, dapat the following day na-submit mo na yan sa cooperating teacher. Kasi, hindi naman porket na-submit mo na ang lesson plan, okay na yon. Kasi bubusisiin pa yan ng cooperating teacher kung tama ba ang ginawa mo or tama ba ang progression of activities. So, pwede pa niyang i-check, babalik sa iyo, i-revise mo, babalik ulit sa kanya hanggang sa maging pulido na ang iyong lesson plan. At saka kasi kapag mabagal gumawa ang practice teacher ng lesson plan, bumababa ang rating niya sa evaluation at the end of your pre-service teaching. So, always remember that. This brings us to the next tip, which is to observe the routines of your teacher. This is very important because number one, pwede mo tong isulat as entries mo sa iyong last FS. I don't know kung meron pa rin kayong FS6. And it is also important kasi pwede mo tong gamitin as your answers kung balak mo na mag-apply sa DepEd after mo mag-graduate. Kaya it is very important that you observe your teacher sa mga ginagawa niya. Obserbahan mo kung ano yung mga solutions na ginagawa niya kapag meron tayong mga problema sa classroom. It is very important kasi through your observations, may masasagot ka if you are applying for a private or public school na. This helped me when I was applying for DepEd way back noong 2017 after I graduated. Kasi the first question I got from the supervisor is, ano yung 3 factors na kailangan natin i-consider when we are creating a reading program for our grade 1 pupils? Then I remember my cooperating teacher that time, hi Ma'am Chona if you're watching, may 3 siyang kinonsider. Yung prior knowledge ng bata, yung time allotment for the reading program, and yung parental involvement about the reading program. So yun yung sinagot ko for that question during my DepEd ranking interview. Through our own observations, matutulungan tayo bilang mga baguhan sa teaching field na makapag-apply sa private or public schools. Aside from that, it is also very important to take pictures of your activities, yung mga documents na ginagawa mo, and yung accomplishments mo. And you can also create or write down your accomplishment reports. This is very important kasi para hindi ka na mahirapang mag-recall or mag-retrieve ng mga special documents or pictures mo for your own portfolio at the end of your pre-service teaching. For the final tip, feel free to ask your cooperating teacher. Lagi mo tatandaan, your cooperating teacher is your most accessible primary source of information na pwede mo mapagkunan ng lahat ng kaalaman na kailangan mo pagdating sa trabaho. Use the time you have to ask questions, magtanong ka ng mga kung ano yung mga nakikitang concerns and issues ng cooperating teacher mo kasi para malinawan ka at para maintindihan mo kung ano ba talaga ang nangyayari sa actual teaching field. And this will help you kapag ikaw na mismo ang naghanap ng trabaho. Feel free to ask questions about classroom management. Feel free to ask questions kung ano yung mga strategies na ginagamit ng cooperating teacher mo when it comes to lesson plan writing. Ano yung ginagawa niya kapag may hindi cooperative na mga parents. Ano yung ginagawa niya kapag may makulit na bata. Yung mga ganyang klaseng tanong ay makakatulong sa'yo kapag ikaw na din mismo ang naging teacher in the future. And for the bonus tip, actually there's 2 tips. Number 1 is make sure that you arrive on time lagi kapag nagpe-pre-service teaching ka na. And number 2, always use all of your talents and skills during your pre-service teaching. Your pre-service teaching is your time para makapagpakitang gilas ka na. Kaya kung meron kang mga natatagong skills and talents, gamitin mo na yan sa iyong pre-service teaching. Kung marunong kang kumanta, use that as a teaching strategy. Kung marunong kang mag-drawing, you can draw your own learning materials. Kung marunong kang sumayaw, gawin mo siyang teaching strategy as long as they are appropriate to your lesson. When I was a practice teacher, I drew all of my learning materials and I created a computer game using Microsoft PowerPoint kasi marunong akong gumamit ng computer. And in one of my pseudo demonstration teaching series here on YouTube, I used singing and songwriting as a teaching strategy. Kaya na ito ay nagpapakita ng iba't ibang haba. upang malaman natin kung alin sa mga ito ang mahaba, mas mahaba, at pinakamahaba, pakinggan ang aking awitin. Handa na ba kayo? Okay, umpisahan na natin. Ito ay ballpen, ito ay ballpen, mahaba, mahaba. Ang ballpen ay mahaba, ang ballpen ay mahaba, mahaba, mahaba. Ito ay ruler, ito ay ruler, mas mahaba, mas mahaba. Ang ruler mas mahaba, ang ruler mas mahaba, ang ruler mas mahaba. Ito ay payong, ito ay payong, pinakamahaba, 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 ang payong, pinakamahaba. At lagi niyong tatandaan na mahirap, sayang at nakakapanghinayang kung alam nyo may magagawa pa kayo upang mas maging maganda ang inyong demonstration teaching pero hindi nyo ginawa. Kaya kung nahihiya kayo, ako nang nagsasabi sa inyo, kayang-kaya nyo yan. And for my videos about classroom management, the summer lesson plan tutorials, and some of my pseudo demonstration teaching series, ilalagay ko ang lahat ng link dito sa description box. At para sa lahat ng mga videos ko tungkol sa DepEd ranking, lesson plan tutorials, and other teacher-related stuff, iiwan ko ang lahat ng link dito sa description box. And once again, this is Niel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye guys!